Okay, so the next sketch is this sketch. So this is day number 12. So it looks like you've got some wood grain down here and some flowers up here. So I want to prove, and I've been on purpose trying to do some of this, that it is perfectly fine to use florals and layouts with boys. So got a couple pictures of the boys here, and kind of the reason why I decided to do this floral is because our bedspreads have kind of a flower theme to them. So the boys were just hanging out together, and I just thought it was a couple cute pictures to document. So this was, I mean, obviously a very long time ago, because my oldest is now 11 and he is 7. So anyway, so I'm going to use Flower Emporium. And I've got a ton of paper, ton of stuff to use. So I'm gonna go through here and figure out what all I want to use. So it looks like you've got wood grain and then flowers up top. So I'm going to start going through the papers here. So obviously with this collection, there's not any wood grain paper, so I decided I was going to substitute it with something different. But I still wanted to use Flower Emporium just because the top of the sketch showed a lot of florals, and obviously, you know, this has a lot of flowers in it. So I'm just going through all the different papers here, going through this paper pad. There's so much variation in this collection, like, I mean, so many different colors, like you really can make this work with anything. So I really like this green paper, so I go ahead and tear that out. And then I pulled out this striped, it's kind of almost like a really light brown maybe, striped paper. And I thought I would use that as my wood grain. So then I was like, okay, well, what am I gonna use for my strip up top and my strip down at the bottom? So I ended up pulling in some craft paper that I had bought from Hobby Lobby, and you'll see in a minute. So that's what I'm doing currently, is I'm going over there and finding it in my stash. And I end up putting it up, and I'm like, I just don't like that color brown with this. Like, I just don't feel like it works well. And so I pivot. I still really like this green paper, and so I'm going to stick with that. But then I start going through the other papers, so you'll see here in a moment. I end up pulling out this paper. Now, this was kind of almost designed almost to go up and down, like on a vertical, but I decided I'm gonna flip it and use it on the horizontal because the top of the sketch shows a bunch of flowers up top. So I decided that I'm gonna use the grid for just the plain grid. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this, the plain grid at the bottom. So you'll see me. I was considering cutting off part of that flower, and I end up reconsidering. So you'll see here in a moment what I end up doing with that instead. So I decided I'm going to cut off this bottom part, and that'll be where the take place of the wood grain paper at the bottom. And see, I'm so bad about making sure I'm like centered on my new glass thing. So I finally realized it, and I'm being better about putting magnets down so I don't like move it as much. And so what I decided, because I didn't want to cut halfway into that flower, I decided to fussy cut it out and then cut the rest of the top off. So of course, you know, I knew going into it that I was going to have some of that green showing through. I went ahead and fussy cut the rest of the flower out. So you'll see what I do to remedy this. But again, I didn't want to cut through this flower. I really liked it, so I wanted to make sure it stayed. And if I cut further down, it was going to be too big of a strip. So obviously, so see, I mean, you're definitely going to see the green coming through. There wasn't any way around that. I thought, well, maybe I could put a flower behind it to kind of disguise it. But then I was like, I've got plenty of grid paper, so I'll just add some grid, a strip of grid paper behind it. You won't really see it, I mean, unless you're really looking. Of course, you have to get like the grid lined up as best you can, so then that way you disguise it from being, you know, two pieces of paper. But so you can't really see except for like maybe on one little part where you can tell that those are two different papers. But again, like you've got to really be looking at it closely. So, but again, I didn't want to cut that flower off, and I was going to end up cutting halfway through it. So I'm going to start going through the ephemera. I really like this little tie. I have tried to use this on a couple different layouts, and for some reason I just can't get it to work on the ones that I've made with Flower Emporium, but I am going to get that thing used. I'm determined because I love it. It's just it hasn't worked out with the layouts that I've done yet. So this is one of the laser cuts, so that little clipboard piece. I really like this green tag because my son's shirt is kind of like almost a neon green, so figure I'd try to get that kind of worked in there a little bit. And then these are some cardstock stickers. One says like love our time together maybe, and then I think the other one I might say like you and me, or some, I don't know, some variation of that. But it almost looks like they've got staples on the end of them, so I decided I kind of like those both there. And I'm wanting to say the title in the sketch was off kind of where that tag would be. And I don't know that I really technically have a title on this, but so I'm going to get into my rub-ons just to fill out that top part. Initially I thought maybe I was going to use it on this bottom piece. So you'll see me kind of like moving this around, trying to decide if I wanted it on the bottom. But I decided that it would go really well up in kind of that little area here where there's like no flowers. I had considered using the die cut pieces too, because there's a ton of die cut flowers to put up there, but I really like the rub-ons. I like this chipboard piece that says you and me, so I was kind of moving that around. I felt like it kind of got a little lost with that dark background there, so I will ultimately move it where that spot is there. And then I'm going to start pulling in some different florals. So again, like I wasn't going to be afraid to use pinks. I really feel like, you know, there's no reason why you can't use florals on boy layouts. I've kind of always been, I don't know, I guess somebody that's not used a lot of florals on boy layouts, but I really feel like 49 Market's flowers are typically pretty neutral looking and the kind of natural looking flowers that you'd see in nature. And, you know, so I'm like, boys like flowers too, so. I had started to like stick with some of these yellow themes, put in that kind of black and white floral down back there, and I end up changing that around. I pulled in that ampersand, I always want to say it wrong. That's a chipboard piece. I'm never sure of like how to use those, but I thought it kind of made sense there because it's kind of the two of them hanging out together, so it's kind of you and me. But and I'm pulling in different pieces here just to try to figure out what looks good. I thought initially I liked this black and white, but I will change that around. Pull on some little die cut hearts. I really like this floral cluster here too. So here's where I'm going to change out those florals. I thought maybe do a bunch of 3, but then I was kind of like, you know what? I don't know that I like that many flowers back there. I just feel like it kind of overwhelms the tag. Kind of keep it a little bit more simple. So you'll see me kind of pull these off. And I'm like, you know what? It makes sense to have a pink flower here because of the fact that I've got those pink rub-ons up there that are going to go up there. I'm like, I need to pull in a little bit more pink on this. And I also liked that lighter color flower because it looked like the ones that were up at the top there. So So I felt like it kind of pulled in both. And so I'm kind of liking the way that this is going. Something about the bottom right kept bothering me though. So I kind of was looking at it. And that's why I moved that back down there. I'm like, do I like this down here? Do I like it up here? But there was just something about it that it was not, I felt like it looked unfinished. So I decided to pull some more rub-ons on. So kind of similar tone and look as the ones up above, just a smaller cluster. I'm like, why don't I bring in another tag? So this is from the laser cut pieces, and I decided to layer that up back here. So pretty much what you see here is kind of how I've settled things. I do end up going off screen here in a moment and gluing everything down, and you will see, like when I show you the final product, it comes back, it looks a little bit different. I end up adding a couple strips of paper at the bottom with like kind of daisy looking flowers on it. It was leftover strips from like one of the branding strips, and I decided to use it up because I didn't want it kind of floating around. And then I also will add on at the top, it was an acetate piece that had kind of this similar daisies on it as the branding strip that I put in down there. Here I'm trying to figure out, I knew I wanted some kind of like leaf, just to kind of give this a little bit more dimension, but everything kind of either was too big or it was blending in too much with that black background. So I do find a couple leaf pieces and kind of the acetate / vellum pieces that kind of had a little bit more of like a kind of lighter green color to it. So I felt like those would work pretty well. And then the other thing I end up adding, and you'll see it in the screenshot, I do end up adding some more flowers up at the top left. So I end up adding another die cut piece as well as a vellum piece, and then another little wordy bit that I think might have been a die cut. I did try to use this pink chipboard piece here. I do end up working the one that says love on there, but the one down at the bottom that kind of looks like almost paint dripping, that will go away. And honestly, I didn't film when I was gluing things down, but I kind of made changes, and I didn't turn back on the recording because it was kind of like small I mean, not huge changes, but my intention was to kind of, what you see is what you got with it. So you can see where I've added those two flowers up at the top left, along with like kind of a little die cut or laser cut piece that came down. Then there's those two strips of branding strip papers, and then you can see those daisies up at the top right. So for the most part, everything else kind of remained unchanged. But here are some close-up shots. I will include the playlist down below and the Facebook group, and I appreciate you for coming by to watch another process video.